Hi everyone, it's Marco, and in this video I will share with you an interview I recently did with Martins Sulte, who is the CEO of the peer-to-peer lending platform Mintos. And the last time we talked, it was actually 2 years ago, just after COVID actually started, so it's a very different time. So I really wanted to get back with him and talk about all the latest news about Mintos, but especially we're talking about the recovery of some of the loans that had issues during the COVID period. So we talked about that. What are Mintos doing about those loans that are still in recovery? And also at the end of this interview, we talk about the future of Mintos, but also of the whole field of peer-to-peer lending in e-shares, his vision about the field and where he thinks this is going. And especially he also talked about interest rates and where he thinks those rates that you can get on peer-to-peer lending platforms are going in the future. So without further ado, let's go straight into this interview that I did with Martins Sulte, who is the CEO of Mintos. So thank you so much for coming to the show. For people that are listening to this or watching this on YouTube and that don't know you or Mintos, can you just introduce yourself and also the Mintos platform?
Sure. So my name is Martins Sulte. I'm CEO and co-founder of Mintos. Mintos is, for those who haven't heard about it, it's an investment platform. So what we do offer is we offer retail investors, so everyday investors, to invest in loans and thus in that way build wealth long term. So that's basically what we have been offering already for what is now 7 years. Today we are one of the largest, if not the largest player in Europe. We have facilitated about 8.3 billion euros of investments in loans, and in total we have about 500,000 customers.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really impressive numbers for sure. So last time we talked and that I published a video about Mintos was about 2 years ago, and a lot changed. So we are going to talk about both news in the field of peer-to-peer lending, but also about Mintos, of course. So I think the number one question would be, with all of that changed, the current crisis and everything, do you think that peer-to-peer lending is still a good investment? I think I know your answer, of course, but if you could just say if you think it's still great and why it's still a great investment.
I do believe that investing in loans and loans as an asset class is a great addition to any portfolio. So, and it's not. I don't think it's going to change. It doesn't change kind of from year to year. So I think it's still a good addition to the portfolio, and it is long term as any investment. It's about the long term, investing in the long term, right? So over the long term you can see what are the kind of real returns, and then the same like with the stock market. So when the stock market experiences some challenges, then does it mean that investing in stocks is not a good idea? No, not, I don't think so. And similar with loans, for sure, like COVID time has been challenging. Now also Russia, it's another challenge. But does it mean that because of those unforeseen events, loans become not a good investment? I don't think so. I think it's a good addition to any portfolio and can bring plenty of benefits to, likewise, to investors who are investing for their pension, or investors who are looking for some type of cash flow type of investment where they can receive cash flow, or just people who want to diversify their portfolio and have some alternative in their portfolio. So there can be many ways how you can think about adding loans to your portfolio.
Yeah, awesome. Let's not talk more about what changed, but for Mintos specifically. So last time we talked, actually, it was in November 2020. So I guess a lot changed for Mintos as well. From my head, mostly that you got regulated and also nodes on the platform. So if you could just tell us a bit more about that and maybe some other news that I missed for Mintos.
Yes, exactly. So the main news are obviously that we got regulated. So It took us quite a while, actually much longer than we expected initially, but finally we transitioned to fully regulated setup now in July this year, 2022. So that's been basically where most of the focus went and most of the resources and then our efforts, apart from of course day-to-day business, some of which obviously involved all the work with the recovery cases where they were due, and also just working with the current lending company. So, but regulation is perhaps the biggest change since the last time we talked, and it's been a long journey to get there, but it's a significant milestone for us, and we are very happy that we have finished that, and that finally we can work in a very well-established regulatory environment. So today we are regulated by our financial regulator here in our home country, which is Latvia. But the license which we have is a European-wide license. It's basically a brokerage license. So we are a broker, and we do fall under the regulation of MiFID. And MiFID is basically the cornerstone regulation, financial regulation in Europe, which regulates all the banks, all the financial institutions in different shapes and forms. So we are also now regulated by that. And that obviously brings certain benefits to investors when it comes to investor protection and to transparency. And investors today can be sure that they are, when it comes to Mintos, they can be sure that there's somebody who is overseeing what we do, and that there is certain quality level which they can expect from us as a platform, which is a regulated platform and which has to follow all the procedures and policies which are set out by the law.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That was for the regulation. That's definitely very good news. Can you also say a bit about it's directly linked about nodes that are available on your platform, and how does it change investing experience for investors?
Yeah, so we transitioned from the previous setup, which was basically assignment of claims that I was previously. Now the regulated setup is where investors do invest in notes. Note is something which we basically came up as a name, but basically it is asset-backed security. So this asset-backed security is basically backed by number of loans. So usually it's going to be 5 to 10 different loans for each note, and then the note is a regulated instrument in which investors do invest. So they buy a fraction of that note, and the note gonna pay based on those underlying assets. So basically, whenever the borrower makes a repayment of the loan, then also the note gonna pay out those payments. So in essence, it's actually for investors doesn't change much as a user experience, but a lot of changes under the hood. And since this is now regulated instrument, then that also brings all the benefits which basically MiFID kind of regulates, which are the same kind of investor protection, meaning that there is all the assets are segregated, Mintos assets and investor assets, so investors can know for sure where they invest and what notes they have. The cash, which is investor cash, is segregated from Mintos cash, so that's kind of one of the benefits. The other one is that investor protection scheme, which means that if something happens to Mintos, then investors would be protected up to 20,000 euros for both the cash which is not invested and also for the securities. Of course, important to emphasize that this compensation scheme doesn't protect against the investment risk. So if the note doesn't perform, investors are still taking that risk. And then transparency. So we now produce and publish all the prospectuses about each and every note. So key information documents, and the investors also do have to go through suitability and appropriateness. So it's all in all, it just makes the investment much more rigid on a regulated platform.
Yep, awesome. So now I propose to go through some questions that my audience directly were asking. So I just sent them an email asking that I will have an interview with you, and they told me what they wanted to ask you about Mintos. So I had a lot of questions, so I just compiled them into 3 main themes that I still a bit received this morning even. So let's go to the first one, which is really the one that came in every email, let's say. So basically people are saying that now the COVID crisis is basically over. Let's say that. So there are still a lot of people in my audience, in forums, social media, that say that they have a lot of money stuck in pending payments or late payments also on Mintos, and especially loans. I read, at least in my audience, from Russia and Turkey. That's what went from those questions. So yeah, what are your plans, the plan of Mintos to address this issue?
Well, the plan is very simple. So the focus is on recovery. So while we can say that the COVID crisis is over, it's not the case with the recoveries of that. So actually, we do continue working on that. So all the cases which went into the recoveries and because of the COVID crisis, so they are still open, and we already today we have recovered 50%, but that is still counting. So we still continue working on that, and there's going to be further recovery. So the work doesn't end there, even though the kind of crisis is behind us. So and actually, we do expect to recover still quite significant part of what has not been recovered yet when it comes to COVID crisis. Russia is basically Russia war was maybe let's call it kind of a black swan event, which I guess nobody expected till the last moment. So neither did we. So this obviously brought additional challenge. So and the challenge there though is different than it was in COVID. So the challenge there is that it's very much impossible to transfer money out of Russia. So basically all the lending companies in Russia, they are regulated by the central bank of Russia, and then Central Bank of Russia has this limitation that you cannot transfer more than basically, which is about like 150, 140,000 euros a month to unfriendly countries. And that limit obviously plays a big role in the current situation, meaning that while lending companies continue operating, the borrowers make repayments and so forth, we cannot receive money from the lending companies. So and as long as kind of the situation is what it is, so hard to come up with kind of solutions for that, because the central bank is regulating all those lending companies, and then basically lending companies obviously are also cognizant of that, and they don't want to be involved in any kind of creative ways of getting money out of Russia. Having said that, there are positive developments. So we have seen one of the lending companies actually they got some special permission to transfer more out of Russia. So we started receiving payments from them. Hopefully, the same gonna happen with other lending companies. But at the end of the day, so we are very much at the mercy of the Central Bank of Russia, which, as you might imagine, is not kind of the easiest party to deal with, especially in this situation. So, and to some extent, I would say also it's a question of how the war goes and how long those sanctions are going to be in place. So that is basically the situation with Russia. So, to answer to the question in general, so yeah, it's basically our focus is on recoveries, and we're going to do that as long as it's necessary, and as long as we can reasonably expect to recover significant amounts. So can do that even though the crises are behind, and hopefully those black swan events don't come like every other year. So shouldn't be so. So when we look back at the same Mintos history, so for the first 5 years there were basically no issues at all, no problem cases, and then we basically got like quite a few because of COVID, and now because of Russia.
Yeah, makes sense. The next question that my audience had, you kind of already answered a bit before, but I'll ask it anyway. So people say that there was a lot of issues recently about from loan originators, but they were asking what if one day, and we hope not, but what if Mintos itself has issues and you have to close shop and I don't know, go bankrupt. What will happen with the people's money in that very bad event?
Yeah. That's where regulation plays a significant role, and it's a day and night difference if it is a regulated platform or not regulated platform. So until well, all goes well until it goes well. So if something happens, then you can start to look like what are kind of the real situation. And with a regulated platform, actually for us, it has changed also significantly what would happen. So previously we were not regulated as well, so we know for sure what it means to be not regulated and what would be the situation if we would go out of business and what happens to investors. But now as a regulated platform, that has changed significantly. So there are a lot of actually requirements from the regulators so that in the situation Mintos goes out of business, investors can continue receiving the payments and they have access to the cash which is on Mintos accounts and so forth. So some of those things are as simple as there is minimum required capital which you have to hold. So today Mintos is required to hold around 800,000 euros of capital. So that capital is just sitting on our accounts. We cannot touch it. It's just cash there, just for the situation. If something happens to Mintos, that there is enough capital that some other party can take over and actually can manage the situation. And then there are all the policies and procedures which you have to approve with the regulator. Among those are basically business continuity plan and all these things. So what would happen exactly if something for some reason Mintos would go out of business? So how we would wind down the operations of Mintos and how we would make sure that investors are properly treated and that they get access. Which in that case, the most important is to get access to your securities, your notes, and continue receiving payments from them. And of course, that you can access your cash. And this is the regulation is very strict and which is one of actually very kind of key points of the regulation is that it helps in those situations if something happens to the platform.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'll say. Great. And then now last question from my audience was more about interest rates. So as we all know, inflation in Europe, at least, it's very high at the moment. So every price is increasing. So can you make a comment on where you actually see on Mintos the interest rates of loans going? Is it going? You see it going up in the near future, staying as they are? Can you comment on that?
They are interest rates are up already today. So already today we see. I would say actually these are the highest rates we have seen ever on Mintos in our history. So it's easily mid double digit returns of 14, 15%. And then on top of that, there are cashbacks. So if anything, the rates have increased significantly already today. What happens when the rates increase? It's basically the whole market increases. So if you're going to see that there is increase in deposit rates and also kind of the rates on other assets will increase as well. So what we expect and believe is that the rate is going to at least remain high and most likely also will perhaps increase in the future if the overall market rate increases as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, makes sense. Okay. So now let's talk a bit to finish about more like the future. So first question would be about the whole field of crowdfunding and peer-to-peer lending. So where do you see the field actually going in the coming years?
I think we're going to see, well, it's not necessarily consolidation in terms of one platform taking over the other platform, but I think there's going to be only that many platforms on the market in the next few years, and it's basically going to be those which are more sizable, and then maybe perhaps there's going to be some niche players here and there, but yeah, I think that we're going to have less platforms in general, and already today we see perhaps less platforms than we saw a couple of years ago. and that to some extent also will be driven by the move towards regulation. So we, as a market leader, perhaps were one of the first to actually go after regulation and kind of proactively go after that. To some extent, actually, we are well also kind of required to get regulated. But I think that this regulation will be a topic for the upcoming few years, and there's not going to be any other way for platforms to operate. So they will have to get regulated, or they will be just bound to their small markets where there's maybe no regulation required. But if you want to serve like big markets in Europe and you want to basically get to a certain scale, then it's inevitable that there's going to be regulation there. So I see that this is also the topic for the next year or two, that the platforms, those who have not started to think about that, they will have to start to think about getting regulated, or then basically close down the platform.
Yep, yeah, makes sense. Also, it's very good for all investors, for sure, in the field. So now a bit the same question, but specifically for Mintos. Can you share what is like where is Mintos going? What would be some maybe news about the platform in the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, immediate focus is now that we have finished regulations, so we will continue focusing on recoveries. So the recoveries is definitely our top priority. So we continue working on those. Apart from that, we very much look forward to basically roll out our operations across Europe and basically use the license which we have, which is European license, which we will passport into across Europe. And that will allow us to serve even more clients, be more visible in some of the markets, and in general do more business when it comes to kind of investor side of our platform. On the other side, today I would say there's a lot of loan supply, but given that we get more investor demand, we will also seek to add new lending companies and new loans from different geographies. So that's also going to be on our table. So those are kind of the things in the immediate future. And then meanwhile, we are also starting to work on bringing new assets on Mintos. So with a license which we have, which is basically brokerage license, so we are as any other broker in Europe. So when we can offer different financial instruments for investors to invest. So the first one which we already started to work now is ETFs. So we're gonna bring you like the same ETFs you can buy in other places, but you will be able to do it on one place in Mintos as well. So you will be able to invest in the same Vanguard, iShares, or whatnot ETFs, so be it World Index or any other index. So that's basically what we also can offer on Mintos. And then we are meanwhile thinking about other products as well, but that's a bit earlier in the development.
Awesome, great news. So I like to end those interviews by asking, like, what would be your advice to somebody really starting in the field of peer-to-peer lending in 2022? So usual advice that we talked about last time is really, for people to make their own research and spend a lot of time researching different platforms, what they offer, if that's the right investment for them. Do you see the same or something else than this kind of advice for somebody really new in the field?
I think that as with any investment, so it is important to understand in what you invest. So to spend at least some time educating yourself if you're not familiar. So that would perhaps be step number one. But meanwhile, I also do believe that the best way to educate is actually to start small and just get experience what it means, and the same as with any other investment. Only when you have really invested, then you actually start paying attention to that. So I would suggest to start on Mintos. You can start with as low as like 50 euros. So just make like a small investment, see how it works, and basically educate in that way as well. But overall, for sure, that is first is to understand what you invest in, and that applies to all investments, not only to investments in loans.
Yep, awesome. That's great advice. So now, just went. what are the best ways to actually get more information or get started with Mintos?
The best way is to go to our website and follow information there. So we do have regular blog posts. We do have our Mintos community, so engage there. So those are the best ways to learn about Mintos, to go through the help section, and in general just check out the website. So those are the best ways to learn more about Mintos and about actually basically investing in loans and investing in general. So we are also now working more on kind of general education about investing, about diversification across different assets, about how the different assets have performed in the past. So definitely can suggest to visit our website.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you so much again. I'm sure that the audience will love it about this content today. So yeah, thank you for coming again.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Alright, this is already the end of this interview. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that it was interesting for you. If you want to learn more about Mintos, I put 2 links just below the video. The first one is directly to the Mintos platform, so you can trade, you can learn more about the platform and create a free account if you want. Second one is going to my website where I have my more detailed review of Mintos that I regularly update with my latest news about the platform. So make sure to check those 2 links that are just below the video. That being said, if you have any questions, either for me or for the people at Mintos, make sure to leave them just below the video. And that being said, thank you again for watching this video and I will see you in the next one.